Hey ladies, welcome to The Hard-Headed Way. I am your host, Dietrich Wiley. So listen ladies, on this journey to identifying, learning, and growing our magic, our girl power, the journey can be driven from the heart perspective or the head perspective. I tend to lead with my logic, my head, but oh, the fun I have when I get to hang out with my girls who lead with their emotions, their hearts. So I want you to join me and my friends on this podcast as we vibe in our village moments where we will talk, laugh, and maybe even cry. Yes, girl, we may even cry. But before we get started, I gotta ask, are you the heart or the head? Come on, ladies, and let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of The Hard-Headed Way. Today's subject is ideation to execution. And guys, I told you that a lot of times I'll go back to my hometown, my family, friends from school, classmates. Today, it's my family. And I wanted to bring the dopeness in the form of Renita Terry along. Renita did something amazing for me as an idea and habit coach, and I wanted to bring her on to have some conversation. I think the seeds that she has are amazing. The connection has been amazing. And so welcome to the show, Renita.
Thank you, Sean. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. So before we get started, before you introduce yourself and share anything about yourself, the premise of the show, The Hard-Headed Way, it is about whether you lead with your heart, your emotions, or with your head, your logic. I'm a head. I lead with my logic 99% of the time. There's a little emotion in there, but I tend to lead with my logic. But so I got to ask you, are you a heart or are you a head?
Well, just like almost the sound of your podcast, if you say it too fast, it sounds like hard-headed. And so I must tell you that I am hard-headed, directly, like right down the middle. And I think a lot of people get me twisted because I'm a fire sign relative to my birthday and all that stuff. So they know that I'm very passionate and different things like that. But I actually literally am right down the middle, both rational and emotion put together.
I love that. So everybody so far is so surprising. Nobody really picks a side or has a strong one or the other. Everybody has been right in the middle. And so that's interesting. And this will probably come up in some follow-up questions as we continue our conversation. But please take a beat, share about yourself before we jump into our conversation.
Awesome. Well, I'll start in a simple way. I am a Southern girl, just by where I was born, but I had big city dreams. And let me see, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an artist. And I say an artist, as a matter of fact, on social media, it used to say that I have two loves, performing arts and people development. And to be honest with you, though my titles have changed, though my business interests continue to evolve, though my professional experiences continue to evolve as well, that remains true that I love the performing arts. I'm a musician. Play multiple instruments, sing, all that jazz. And also people development, that is what drives me, for people to have transformed lives and for me to be able to connect them in some way. And so I'll give it to you in the form of my personal mission. My personal mission in life is to connect people to resources or other people who can improve their art, their life, or their business. And in that, you can see, again, two passions, performing arts and people development, in that mission statement.
I love that, like 100%. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted you on the show, because number one, I wanted to shout you out because literally the title speaks for itself, moving from ideation to execution. So guys, I actually had a call with Renita and another cousin one day, and the purpose of that conversation was to talk about project management and things like that, which is what my trade is, if you will. And in the course of that conversation, I had not shared anything about doing a podcast with anyone. I don't even know what led me to even bring that out in the conversation. But I ended up leaving that conversation with a few pages of notes. I had direction for how I wanted to execute. And so just that people development is so amazing. And I didn't even, it's back to that value in the village. Of course, I feel like all of my family is gifted, but for you to have this skill set, I didn't know it. And to hang up that phone, I literally told Corey, I was like, I just had the most amazing conversation with my cousin. I was like, it just blew my mind. And so let me ask you, how did you get into this idea and habit coach? How did you shift or transform? I guess for me, it's just knowing how well you do it. And I'm pretty sure that this is just like day to day. This is normal, Renita. But how did you shift and identify this lane for yourself?
Okay, that's a great question. And let me try to give you an evolution from childhood to all the way to now in a succinct way. I have parents who are well educated and very particular, and both of them in their own ways taught me how to ask critical questions, how to think for myself, and also how to frame it in a way that is not, it is being clear to answer the question that somebody asks you, not giving them too much, like all these kinds of things. I was put through an apprenticeship, I'll say, in a real sense, because of my parents. My father is a public speaker. He and I have the same bachelor's degree. His was called oral communications. Mine is called communication studies. My mother also spent 30 years in the public schools and then retired out as a guidance counselor. So everything that I am started, of course, with them. Then I bit the bug. I caught the bug, whatever you want to call it, when I was 16 years old and took my first psychology class in 11th grade. And so I really tell people in a real sense that over the last 20 years, I've been mastering social behavior and that kind of thing. Everything that has to do with counseling and brain science and coaching and all that. Like I've been a sponge for over 20 years. And so with that kind of as the foundation in answering your question, you just evolve as you learn things and as you are really staying in a lane that matters to you and that kind of speaks to you, wherever you have resonance. And talking about being a musician, I'll put it like this: when you strum a guitar, if you let it ring for a while, it's going to vibrate for a while, and that sound is going to continue. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have to in our lives do things where there is resonance, where when we do it, it like moves us in a way that it lasts a little while, and we have to pay attention to that.
Girl, let me look, hashtag. I mean, I love that. I 100% love that. And so for Renita, in doing that, and again, I can't say it enough. And one of the things I always like to call out, I don't share my age necessarily, but I think the beauty is a lot of times people are always going and thinking that they need to look for somebody that's older than them, or, I'll say older to get wisdom, to get those seeds of how do I build my next steps. And so for all rights and purposes, guys, Renita's younger than me. And I want to highlight that, especially with all of my guests that are younger, because I don't have a problem receiving information from anybody. And I think that is the value in the village, right? And so there's moving from subject matter expert to trusted advisor. And so for me, coming to you, having this conversation, and we've had several conversations, y'all. We come from a family of people that love to talk. And so this can happen all day, every day with me and Renita. But
all day.
Yeah, how do you manage when there's a subject area that somebody is, that's out of your realm, so to speak? How do you transition, or how do you become that sponge? How do you soak up the knowledge to be able to help them further themselves? Because what you have, to me, you didn't have to be, I think it was just your approach to your goal. You gave me the same goal that everybody else has, and you offered some lanes. You offered some encouragement, and you had the proper language, if that makes sense, that I was like, oh, I can do this. Like 100%. I felt like, boom, I hung up that phone. I was like, Fiverr, let me get out here and see what's on Fiverr. Again, things that I could have done, Googled, whatever, but there was something about, and maybe that's just your anointing, your calling that you're walking in. But how do you help people navigate in an area for which you don't have a lot of knowledge about the subject area?
So I'm going to try to answer your question. I may need just a little clarification about what you mean, because if you're talking about people that I consult with and then sometimes coach with, where, they may have a different background than me, if that is what you mean, I'll answer in this way, that I listen, and I'm trained at this point to listen for people's obstacles. Because of the things I've studied, I'm listening for how their language is indicative of a brain cog or a mental cog. And so I don't have to have expertise in what they have expertise in to hear how they're getting hung up on some of the same behavioral patterns as somebody who's in a different field, or myself, because I'm not exempt. And that's, let me be very clear. Anybody who's a coach, a consultant, I don't care, entrepreneur, like anybody who's in the helping profession, anybody who's like in your case, project management, a leader, whatever, we are not exempt from hangups. It's just that hopefully in our capacities, we're able to facilitate someone else's breakthrough. So I think that's just how I approach it. Like, I'm just, here's something I don't say often. I got to be careful how I say this, because I've learned it is a superpower, and I'm serious when I say what I'm about to say. This week, Sean, I was thinking about, do you remember taking the different kind of assessment tests, like personality and career assessment tests in high school? And there was one in particular called the Hollins Code. Do you remember that by chance? Hollins Code?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay, so there are about 6 of them, and I won't get into the weeds of it, but my top 3 are ASE, which stands for artistic, enterprising. Enterprising is my last. Artistic, social, and enterprising. And so what they do is give you certain career paths, suggestions within, like starting with the artist or artistic, then social, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just say that some of the career assessment tests I've taken, if I go back and look, I'm sure they revealed that I could have been in the law enforcement field. And part of that is because my eye for, like, I'm an inspector, and I'm going to say it in that way to kind of keep it, again, to not completely reveal my superpower, but I'm an inspector. I'm a watcher. I'm a noticer. And so as a ID and habit coach, or as a coach and as a creative business consultant, my job is to notice things and then to bring it to your attention. Period.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And so you mentioned the word superpower. And one of the things that I have been doing lately is, I know what my strengths are. And I took a strength finder test. Actually, it's Strength Finder 2.0 from Gallup, that someone at work recommended. And one of the things that came from it, to your point, it called out my 5 top strengths. And it wasn't that I didn't know about the strengths, actually, but the word superpower. And I've always told people that I have an ability to be able to take something that's really, really hard and break it down into very small pieces that you can chew on, you can digest, you can understand. And it was actually just in the last few weeks that I actually got to show that. And so something that's been overwhelming people at work for a while. And I was like, I guess I'm not seeing what the issue is. And I'm like, you take this and you move this and you say this and you do this. And in my head, it's every day for me. So for you to say superpower, that resonates a whole lot, because I'm at a point where, and I think this is the other thing about you that stands out, especially for the lane for which you are, to me, you excel in from a coach perspective is your ability to not just identify or have an eye or a watchful eye for what people do. You have a major comfort to me in identifying, number one, what your strengths and superpower are, but being able to call those things out in other people, right? And so for me to know I have a strategic superpower, that's not something I've ever really said out loud. And you bring a confidence in the room or into the conversation that makes me feel okay with owning that space. And I can't say it enough, Renita, like I'm, self-esteem isn't something that I struggle with. Um, Being good at what I do has never been anything that I struggle with, but being able to own it, you have an ownership about the lane and the seeds that you pour that is just so, it's just like there's an awareness there and there's an ownership there that I completely like envy, like I can't say it enough, like kudos to you because it takes a lot to move me, Renita. Like, I mean, our family, and guys, she and I talked about this a few days ago. And when I say this, I'm not saying it to be bad, but I come from a highly critical family, meaning we can come to the table and quickly call out the things that are wrong with the picture, the things that need to be fixed in the picture. And so it makes me very cognizant of myself. I'm very self-aware from that perspective, right down to the clothes that I wear when I leave out of the house. And so from that, I struggle with considering myself an expert, Renita. Like I 100%. The fact that you felt comfortable enough to ask me about project management, as good as I feel like I am, I really do feel like I'm great at it. I've never considered myself an expert that I was so ready to pour into other people. I really feel like you attributed to that a whole lot. So I just want to say thank you for that, 100%.
Well, thank you. That's all I can say. And I think I want to say something that Issa Rae said in an interview. I heard her talking. Someone asked her a question about just her journey, her artistic journey, and like building this confidence. And so I'm paraphrasing what she said, but it stuck with me. Came across it just about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she said that in order to build your confidence, you have to be in a circle of people who basically give you permission to, okay, I don't know if I can say this word on your podcast, but I'm just be real, right? Who give you permission to be shitty. And
got it.
And I'm saying, like, so for her, she had a mother who was just like, and there are these artists out there who just had parents that was just like, hey, create, even if you just banging drunk, like do your thing. And that there was that perpetual support. So it doesn't matter if you didn't grow up with that as an adult. And I'll say this, here it is from that kind of helping professional standpoint. Even though I'm not a therapist or anything like that, of course, I have the language, right? So I'll say this to someone who may be listening. I'll say it to you. Our goal as we become an adult is to parent the inner child inside of us. And so if we didn't grow up with a certain support network, our job is to create that I'm going to call it an ecosystem, that allows us to build the confidence that we need, because confidence actually just comes from repetition, or to put it in a way, you and I come from a certain faith background. This is what I heard one person say. He said, get some victories under your belt. And so I think that's where confidence comes from. And so from the expert standpoint too, there's so many reasons why what you said could be the case. And I'm not, I ain't diagnosing you or having that conversation on this podcast.
Talk to me.
No. But what I'm saying for someone who may be listening is that you develop expertise the same way you learn how to tie your shoe. Period. And then let me be clear, because this is what you're saying, because you're for doggone sure expert at what you do as a project manager, as somebody who has strategic thinking. But also you just have to develop the expertise, not of that, but of sharing it with more people.
Ooh. Ooh. You gonna drop that at my feet early today? Like that's what we doing today, Renita?
Gotta do it. You know how I am. That I gotta do it the way, I gotta call it like I see it and feel it,
I mean, we're not 20 minutes into this conversation, and that's how you're gonna do it. I love that. And so, and again, you have such a perspective, such a translatable perspective, I guess. And I think, I had my grandfather used to be I think he was your grandfather as well, Uncle Rob. They were such great storytellers. And you know how some people can just tell a joke and they can drag that joke all the way out. And when they finally give you the punchline, the timing is perfect. How they deliver it is perfect. You have that, whatever you identify. And I don't think it's language. It's just that connection that you have. And I think it's just so amazing. You just gave me a nugget. Like I gotta do something with that here over the next few days. You just gave me a whole nother nugget that I need to digest. And so let me ask you this, being a coach, for you, what are you most challenged with professionally or personally? Like what does that look like for you right now?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because actually in what I just said, I was intending to say this as well, because you talked about the fact that you've never much struggled with, and I don't know if you used the word confidence, but you just kind of talked about being sure of yourself, and I forgot how you framed it, but
I want to be self-esteem. I was saying I don't struggle with self-esteem, but I struggle with owning that expert lane, if that makes sense.
Got it. And I wanted to respond to that. And again, for listeners, I want to say what's so ironic about this conversation, and the title of this podcast being Heart-Headed Way is a paradox, right? So let's talk about the paradox in this conversation. Here it is, two people who are related and two people who are goo and gaga over each other's gifts and skills. And yet, you just said that you've never really struggled with self-esteem, but just kind of owning, a lane or like publicly really is what we've talked about.
Right.
What's interesting is I have struggled with self-esteem, and I have struggled with sometimes owning things in a room. And yet, so I've been this, matter of fact, the pastor who used to pastor the church that you've attended before, he titled a talk one time, "The Paradox of Power." And I will tell you that I will not try to pretend to be perfect on this podcast without telling people that I am not, or I happen to be a paradox of power. And so really that opens up a whole nother conversation, or it could, about what do you do when you feel gifted and when you feel powerful, but yet there's this internal struggle going on. And I think my answer to that, for myself, I cannot answer for you as a listener, but my answer to that for myself is, again, I have to give it to you because I come from a certain faith background. So I have to give it to you like I've heard it said, because this is a beautiful analogy. Someone used the example that the creator is standing at the end of time telling you to keep coming. Keep coming. In other words, he's already passed through everything that you are struggling with, or he or she, however you identify. But there is this cosmic power that's bigger than you that's telling you to keep coming. And I think that's how you have to see in your paradox of power, to say, you know what, where I am today is not where I will be 6 months from now. As a matter of fact, the mistake I made 2 years ago will not define, and nor does it diminish the greatness of who I am. And I have to have, honestly, enough grit to keep going through really the societal pressures of being imperfect.
Girl, we should just open the doors of the church now and take up an offering and everything. I mean, then y'all, this girl told me before we started that she wasn't prepared. All lies, 100% lies. I mean, you stepped in it this morning and you stepped in it with both feet. So no, I appreciate that 100%. That was absolutely good. And so Renita, I got to ask because, and another thing for you guys that are listening, Renita is very visible on social media. She is like the go-to person for a lot of the resource needs or resource questions that people are asking about, especially as it relates to project management. I'm sure other subjects. And so I have to ask you because you have made yourself a highly visible and giving part of my village and for village of just strangers. So what does your village look like?
I'm glad you asked me this question too, because ironically, I was thinking about somebody in my village this week several times and heavily yesterday. And that person in my village called my phone yesterday at 6:30. This person lives in another state. They are older than me, almost 20 years. And they called my phone and I was like, man, I was just thinking about you. And I ended up having a conversation with this person and just said, wait a minute, how old are you? And the reason I asked her that is because I realized that there are at least 3 women in my circle who are around this kind of middle age of 50 who are just like these powerhouse career women. As you talk about this being able to walk in a room and command it, like, and so when you ask me what my village looks like, it is power packed. It is power packed. And honestly, I have to take it back again to my parents because they cultivated power packed villages. And I mean, right there, that's another thing we could go on in the weeds about, because if on the flip side, the struggles that you battle with, if you don't continue to wage a war against them and succeed, it's been said that your children will deal with what you fail to address.
Absolutely.
So if that is the case, on the flip side, they will also benefit, and there will be compound interest from the ways in which you open doors for them by cultivating great relationships. And so I just have to say that my circle is power packed, and I'm reminded of that. Like the village I've been cultivating, and really my parents again started cultivating for me. And let's say at minimum from 18 until now. So again, almost 20 years, I've been cultivating this village. And honestly, it is one of the most valuable things I could have, especially right now as I am actively pivoting in my career to not something that's completely brand new, but something that is certainly requiring another level of commitment and focus to master. And so my village matters right now.
Oh, wow. That was good. That was good. And you actually just sent us into my next question, which was, and guys, again, Renita and I have been talking, so I know that she's pivoting a little bit in her career. And so I'm curious because this is something the pandemic brought about with several people. There's the great resignation. There's the launch of many new businesses. There's the changing of careers. And for you, what did that effort look like, or what has that effort looked like? Has it been challenging? What's been the most challenging? Because one of the things I want to make sure our listeners know is that the effort that it's taking, that's not the hardest part. The getting up, the researching, the reading, it's moving beyond that to the networking, to being able to open yourself up to people and asking for help and asking for guidance and asking for those people to step in and help connect those dots. So what has that pivot looked like? What has that been like for you?
It's been extremely daunting. And ironically that you would ask me this, I read an article, and I guess I didn't send it to you, but I will after this. Read an article yesterday by a sister and it appeared in a digital publication on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I don't know what her background is, but nevertheless, the title of it was called Rethinking Grief. And it was really addressing the fact that a lot of employees, whether they lost somebody in the physical state or realm or not, they are dealing with these griefs that oftentimes the workplace does not necessarily account for, that is affecting their ability to show up fully on the job. So when I talk about it's been daunting, the daunting part is change. To be honest with you, it's acknowledgement that where I am is not necessarily going to work for where I'm going and or where the world is going. And so how do I first, talking about this rethinking grief, how do I mourn? And how do I mourn without going into this deep, dark place? How do I mourn?
That's good.
How do I mourn where I've come from? How do I mourn what is about to be no longer? How do I mourn? I guess I'll put it like this. How do I mourn with hope? And how do I mourn keeping possibility on the precipice? How do I do that so that I can really do, like Rachel Hollis has a book titled Girl, Wash Your Face. I have not read that book, but the title itself really talks about what you have to do. Girl, wash your face. And, the family we come from, might say it like this in some other words, but wash your hind parts while you at it. You know what I'm saying? Get up, you know what I'm saying? And go do, number one, let go of some of the things that you are desperately trying to hold on to that just aren't like call dead things dead things. That's number one. Call dead things dead things. Secondly, once after you call it dead things, it's okay to mourn dead things, but after you mourn dead things, be willing to leave dead things.
I got to write that down. Girl. You dropped a lot. You dropped a lot in that. And so how do I mourn with hope? Listen, we got lots of follow-up conversations for this.
All right, guys, we're going to stop today's episode right here. I assure you it's not over yet. Tune in to the next episode to hear the rest of our discussion. Thank you, and catch you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. As promised, we'll be picking up where we left off in our last episode with the remainder of our great conversation with Renita Terry, Idea and Habit Coach. Without further ado, let's get back into it.
So I have to ask, being that obviously we are African American women, we are challenged obviously naturally in corporate America because we're female, because we are African American. And one of the beauties of this podcast for me, and it's been the most touching part of it, is just to see how much hidden beauty is there, how much hidden value is there. And for you and where you are now in pivoting and, like you said, mourning with hope, how do I pivot, move forward, identify those dead things as a community, as a sisterhood, as a village? Has that been hard connecting with other African American women in moving forward, like rubbing shoulders and moving forward in the area that you're choosing to move forward in?
No, I'm going to tell you why. Because again, this has to do, as an idea and habit coach, I pay attention to my own habits. And that's what I would say. It sounds like you were almost going to ask me, how do you mourn with hope? The way you mourn with hope is you examine your habits. So if your habits are constantly, and you and I may have talked about this offline, but, and as you guys can hear, like I read tons of books, right? But here's another book for you that I recommend for the listeners. It's called, I believe, The Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan. He is a strategic business coach and has been for years for heteronormative white men. And however, this book really was a shift in mindset about what has to happen for you to mourn with hope. And that is that the gap is you constantly thinking about and staying in your mind in the place that is thinking if you are where you are. So this idea, what did you call it? Idea to execution, or whatever the case. So whatever your idea to execution, the gap is continuing to focus on the failure part of what did not get done. The gain is choosing to shift your mindset to say, because I was courageous, this is how far I've come. And I am going to celebrate the gain more than sitting in the gap.
Girl, I want to snap my fingers there. Like, I feel like you just did some poetry and dropped some gems, some Love Jones type gems. Like, that was amazing. Like, oh, I could continue this conversation with you all day. So let me ask you this then. How do you quiet, knowing all of that you just said, having been well read? Obviously, I do believe that our families have been foundational in setting us up for success. But how do you quiet the noise of the culture? How do you keep what the culture says in check and not allow that noise to distort where you're headed, what you're seeing, where you're going?
So I think the other part of what I was going to say, before talking about the gap and the gain, I brought that up to talk about habits. And so the habit is let's just be real, right? And you talked about this relative to Black women in corporate settings and all that kind of stuff. I just have to bring it back when you talked about the village. If your village is weak, I don't know how you're going to survive, because I'm going to tell you that my village is not weak, and that is how I'm surviving.
Ooh.
So I think the habit has to be cultivating relationships with people who are forward thinking, with people who are not trying to tell me what to do, but who can give me insight based upon their journey. And so you have to actively be willing to make that phone call and say, I'm struggling. And then let me tell you another habit, because this is for real, especially in this global health crisis that we've dealt with. You also, because like you're talking about quiet in this noise. Oh, if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to survive either, because I have had to do that in my life. Here it is. I got powerful people all around me, but make no mistake about it. Every one of them powerful people are not who should be having a front row to my ear right now, because they have their opinions about what it should look like. Or this is what I used to say a lot to people. Everybody cannot handle your innermost and your outermost at the same time. So for me, while I'm pivoting, for those people who have more binary thinking or a kind of A to Z thinking, and they don't understand the zig and the zag, those kind of people are detrimental to me right now, because I'll spend more time reflecting on their expectations and disappointments than focusing on my gains.
Renita, like you giving me too much this morning. Like, y'all, I got to go back and say, she told me she wasn't prepared for this conversation. And oh my God, like, this is absolutely amazing. Like, Renita, again, y'all, and this is the thing, Renita and I just connected in recent years. I had not, and our families are big, undoubtedly. And there's about almost a 10-year age difference between Renita and I, about 8-year age difference between Renita and I. And so the connection came about as a result of a family member passing. We connected that day. It was fun. We laughed. I mean, I remember Renita leaving you, telling my sister, I just met, a cousin of ours. She's funny. You reminded me of my sister, actually. And I was like, and it was just something about her. Like, it was just the conversation, even that day, went kind of deep. Like, we started talking about family history. And I said all that to say, like, I so value, to your point about if your village is weak, it just makes me proud that, number one, we're kin. But the other part is to see how what came from Uncle Rob my grandfather and how it's spread across all of us in our various different lanes. It's just so amazing. And so at our core, at our foundation, I always say, all I know is strong, right? Like all I know is pivoting when I hit a brick wall, figuring out what my next step's going to be and moving forward. And my superpower from a strategic perspective is I analyze it. I can analyze buying a pair of sneakers, let me be clear. But I can take it and break it down and say, okay, if I go this way, I can do this. And what happens with me, because I do lead with my logic, because I do have a very, the way I've been set up with my mom and being taught to think and to lead, because that's the position she's always put me in. I can walk by a tree a few times before I go ahead and commit to something. That's probably my weakness. While that's also one of my superpowers, that's also a weakness of mine, that I have to get out of that loop and just step into it. And so for me, that is the beauty of you. I feel like I have to have a you in my village. I have to have a cousin of mine who is very laid back and slow to anger and has a very a methodical and laid back approach to conflict. And so it's so great to see that beauty rising up in our generation and moving forward. Because for me, as much as I feel like my mom and my grandmothers and my grandfathers, all of them were strong, I feel like we get to leverage their strengths that everybody didn't get a chance to see, right? I feel like my grandfather was a great speaker and could have been like an amazing, well-known man throughout the country. And I feel like, to your point, that we get to live out the things that they didn't get to accomplish in their lifetime. And so I see that with you, and having remembered Uncle Rob and Aunt Louise, I so see, like, I see you are definitely his granddaughter, like 100% can absolutely see that. And so I have to ask this question. I want to turn it internal to our families. How does your family see this skill with you? Are you a trusted advisor within your family circle for the type of information that I seek out from you, and obviously others as a coach? Does your family see that and help perpetuate that further? If that makes sense.
All right. So you opening up a can of worms, and I'm gonna give it to you real and raw. You ready?
Come on.
I'm an artist, so I'm gonna give it to you like this. It's the thin line between love and hate. Okay. That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it, because when you are sure in who you are, and it's in, and so here it is, we talked about earlier, just kind of sometimes dealing with self-esteem issues. And so it's again, I'm a paradox of power, because though at times I dealt with maybe I should do better to call it not self-esteem issues, but like feeling unsure of myself in moments, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So even though that was the case, the truth is I always been sure of myself relative to like these things I instinctually know that I cannot explain. And I've been like that since I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? And so to answer your question about family, when you are a kid that's a noticer and you're dealing with adults who are trying to shield you from some things in a world that's imperfect, and maybe even imperfect in the household world, and then maybe imperfect in them, when they are trying to shield you from that, or to in some ways, sometimes this is just my opinion.
Sure.
Maybe pretend like, no, you didn't see what you saw, or no, you didn't hear what you hear, or so you hear these phrases, stay in a child's place. So I heard a lot of things, stay in a child's place. I heard you're too independent. I heard all these things that honestly, if it wasn't for my own self-work, it could have broken my stride and my pride.
Come on.
And so I've really spent the whole of my life trying to get back. All we're trying to do is get back to who we really are. And even though I say get back to who we really are, we're really trying to discover who we really are. And it is, and I said that to you in a conversation recently, and I'll say for the audience that it's really when you know who you are, and then when you know who's your who, that going from trusted advisor to expert becomes easier because you like, can't nobody silence me, and I know who I'm talking to.
That's right. I love that. You have such a way with words. And so I got 2 more questions for you. And I've decided in all my note taking this morning that we will have this conversation again. I feel like these conversations are fruitful. I feel like these conversations could help right here in our family. And I think those are the connections that remain to be made. And I think if nothing else from 2022 or that I gained from this podcast, that is one of my main goals, is to connect Renita to this person over here, connect this person over here. You're struggling with this, let me connect you to Renita, or connect you to me. I mean, whatever. That is the beauty of this podcast and these conversations is, number one, I am committed to understanding. That is my word for 2022. I want to understand your why. How did you get here? And what I do with that understanding is I take it and I put a mirror up to myself and ask myself some of those same questions. Or I take some of those seeds that you just dropped a little while ago and I speak that over myself, because there is value in those connections. There is value in hearing your struggle, but also your successes. Like I don't want to take away or detract from like the, when I say me too, but I want to say I experienced that too. But this is where I ended up. And so, people always, see where you are. They don't know your journey, but to know your thought process in the middle of that journey, that's important to me. Like, and so to say that, that's really, really good. And I asked that question about what you are in your family, because I always look at organically what, people always say, which cousin are you, or which, and how my family views me. And so I'm cognizant of the role that I play, if you will, and I'm okay with it. And my role is usually organizing stuff because that's just my thing. I mean, it is what it is. And do I get tired of it? I may get annoyed in the process, but I also realize that that's the value that I bring to our circle. And so I own it. I'm okay with it. Does everybody trust me to do it? I think that in my family, and for those that are listening, is that I realize that is my superpower, organizing. And I think some of my family members want to do what I do and don't do it as well. And so it's letting go, like, hey, this is Sean's thing. Let me let her have that. And so usually that's the tussle, right? Is for us. We're fighting a lot of times, if you will. Fighting is a strong word, but we're fighting for that we're in the same lane. We're trying to function in the same lane, and what's easy for one may not be easy for the other. But do you want to grow in that space? Absolutely. And I think we just have to learn how to pivot and respect what the strengths of the others are, and be willing to take it again, regardless of age. And I think that is the thing with my family is the age piece of it, is looking around for wisdom, not always feeling like your age. You have to look forward from an age perspective to get wisdom or have lived longer. Don't get me wrong. They do have a story. Our ancestors or the elders in our family do have a perspective and all that we don't have, but there's still wisdom that resides in some of us younger people. And so I want to always ask that question just to get a little bit of footing and oriented to how each of our little smaller family circles, how they function. And so my last 2 questions, one of the things I want to say is,
can I interrupt you for just a second before you ask me those questions? So if you ask in that way, like how does my family see me, and to give it more in a succinct way, in a real sense, I guess I'll use alliteration and say they see me as a consultant and advisor like you do. But I think they also see me. So let's say advisor for alliteration, but they also see me as aloof. And only recently have I started again to settle more into who I am, to realize and number one, understand. Like think about the most powerful people in the world. Can you reach them every time you feel like it?
Right.
No,
That's
you
right.
cannot. And then the other part of it is I am an introspective person. So I am actively, even in talk about all this pivoting and evolution in the last 2 years during this global health crisis. I am actively building a life that can fall off the grid and fall off the map at any time. Like that is what I desire, because I'd rather be with my own thoughts in the woods, and I'd rather somebody like yourself come visit me where I am than me show up in this hustle and bustle world to try to, I want them to want. I was talking to a friend of mine about participating in your own rescue. And I'll just say in short, I want to connect with the people who want to participate in their own rescue enough that they will follow the path. I think they say it's Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, if you can build a better mousetrap, the world will beat their way, to your doorstep or something. I'm messing it up, but the point is, if you will build the path, people will find their way to your door. And my thing is, I have a more introspective life, and I'm starting to accept that instead of people, trying to make me be this extroverted person. I am an ambivert. Like I am an extroverted introvert, but I am an introvert for sure. And so I don't have to conform, talk about those societal pressures and stuff. I don't need, listen, if I can't conform to the world, that's why I say it's a thin line between love and hate. Because honey, I'm starting to accept that even within my own family, I release trying to please and conform even there, because it is an absolute losing battle in a way.
Yes.
that I can lose my soul trying to, honestly, let's talk about something else that you and I talked about offline, about being understood. Like I'm having to release, unfortunately, the need to be understood.
Wow. That's good. Yes. Yeah. I don't even have anything else to offer on. that's it. Like that's 100%. And I think for me, you stated it well. I think I too am an extroverted introvert, and I know how to turn it on when I have to. This podcast is one of those things that is pulling me out of my normal day to day. But I think I had to let that go. I had to let go of the need to be understood. I had to let go of the need to tell my side of the story, or to even try to get you to understand my thinking. And that's why I said my word for this year is understanding, because I'm committed to understanding, whether it be your walk, your story, your why, because I'm very introspective too. And I want to take that and turn it on myself and see, what do I look like in that picture? What do I look like, whether it be right there, a part of your immediate circle, outside of your circle? What does my circle look like? What do I look like in the circle? That's what these conversations are for me. These conversations allow me to go back and check myself, because at the end of the day, I do want to be better, but better for me, or better according to the way God sees me, not better for the way my family or my friends or whomever see me. I want to be an authentic version of me, not some muddy version of what somebody else thinks I should be. And so, no, that was 100% perfect, Renita. And so I'll ask you this: what do you tell a young lady who's struggling with her identity, with her career? She's struggling with her, taking, maybe she knows her gift, maybe she doesn't. What advice, what wisdom would you give her?
Two things. Number one, I would ask her, struggling compared to what? because that's where we're always struggling. It's in comparing ourselves to someone or to some ideal situation. So struggling compared to what? And then I think the next thing, and I'm actually, as I talk to you, I'm digging through some notes real fast because I actually heard this. Some people talk and gave Clubhouse a bad rap, but I sat in some great rooms on Clubhouse last year and I took notes where I could. And there was something that stood out to me and I want to share with you that this lady said actually about confidence. So if someone is listening and you are kind of struggling in your identity, it's that whole thing about confidence. And I'll tell you who said it. A lady named, I'm going to give it to you in just a second. Let me see if I can find it.
No, take your time. This is good. This is good.
I'll attribute it to somebody in just a minute because I'm not seeing her name right now. But this is what she said. She said, "You're not struggling with confidence." Her name is Michelle McLean. I have no idea what she does. She may be an artist or a coach of her own in her own right. But she said, "You don't have a lack of confidence. You have a lack of keep." KEEP. The K stands for knowledge. The E stands for experience. The next E stands for education. And the next P stands for preparation. Wow. And so again, that's how you develop your confidence. So to that person who is struggling with your identity, you could be struggling with your preparation. Maybe you impatient. And so your impatience is causing you to forfeit the preparation like you need to. Or again, that comparison piece may be causing you to not get the experience you need, because you can flip the word experience into wisdom. So that's just that. I would ask her, number one, compared to what? Struggling compared to what? And number two, you don't lack confidence. You lack keep: knowledge, experience, education, and preparation.
And that's the note I want to end on, because that was absolutely amazing. Renita, I am determined to keep this conversation going with you. I feel like we'll have to do regular check-ins because you dropped so many gems today. Your insight has been absolutely amazing. I have some things to walk away with. I'm hoping that everybody that listens is able to get a pencil out, y'all. Get a pencil and paper out and get ready to take notes because this has been truly, truly, truly one that I will have to replay over and over again to make sure that my notes are really clear and accurate. And so thank you for joining me today, for sowing a seed and giving me your time. And so I want you to take a moment, share your social media handles. I will be sharing all of her information on my pages when this gets ready to air. And so I want you guys to know, reach out, connect to Renita. You are amazing. So share your information.
Thank you, Sean. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Again, thanks for the invitation. And people can find me, especially as I'm pivoting and all. So that means URLs may change, but you'll always be able to find me on social media, several outlets at Renita D. Terry. So RENITA DTERRY. You'll be able to find me there. Currently, I'm hanging out a lot more on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, probably in that order, which is so weird to me, actually, but that's kind of where I'm hanging out. But you'll be able to find me, and you'll probably always be able to find a link in a bio to get in touch with me. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much. Listen, y'all, today, value in my village. I went into my family, and boy, did we get it. And again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And listen, we will keep this conversation going.
Indeed, I look forward to it.
Hey, ladies, thanks for listening to the Heart-Headed Way podcast. Please subscribe and share with your family, friends, coworkers, whomever. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media Facebook and IG at The Hard-Headed Way. And finally, if you have some podcast topics or you would even like to be a guest on the show, please email me at thehardheadedway@gmail.com. Make it a great one, ladies. Bye.